Hello and welcome to Pricing College with your hosts Aidan Campbell
and Joanna Wells.
It's that time of year where we approach Black Friday and of course the Christmas shopping season. So in today's podcast we want to take a bit of retail therapy and ask, will people in a retail environment be prepared to pay a bit more, not a huge amount more, but will they pay more for better service and other things?
Well, I'm going to answer that question right away. And I would say, Aidan, that I think people are willing to pay more for a better customer experience in retail. But now I'm going to add the usual caveat, but different people are going to have different propensities to pay different amounts. So it's not just a sweeping statement. But overall, I do actually think people are. But I also think that people that are feeling, say, like emotional, i.e. frustrated, or they've just had a bad experience in a shop, for instance, are more likely to spend more than those that are just having, your regular experience. Nothing's really happened. They've not had any emotional sort of things that made them angry, frustrated, etc. They haven't experienced any pain. I think those type of people probably would pay less than the most frustrated people. So here we go into almost the psychology of pricing in retail.
Yeah, like I always I look at what I've done in my shopping. I'm not the world's biggest shopper, I have to admit. But when I look at purchases I've made, so items like electronics, laptops, computers, in Australia I'll often go to Harvey Norman. And the reason, it's not because Harvey Norman is the cheapest, it's not because it is the widest range. They're quite good for both those things, but it's more ancillary items, such as a less stressful shopping experience than maybe a JB Hi-Fi or another, retailer. There's other things such as you can get better assistance from the people who work in the store. Harvey Norman often is a franchise, and so the people running or working in the store often are more incentivized. I might be wrong, but I feel they're more incentivized to give good customer service and talk you through the product you're buying. And then also items, Harvey Norman has an insurance replacement scheme for a lot of electronics. And I find that quite useful because anybody who buys quite a bit of computers or electronics knows that within 2 or 3 years, the chance of it malfunctioning are reasonably high. So I do pay more for that. I have other examples that I'll give in a few moments covering other shopping experiences. But I do think, when I'm going out to buy those items, to me those are big ticket items, I actually think, do I want the hassle or do I want to de-stress doing this?
Yeah, I know it seems to all come down to this quite general term customer experience, and I think you've done a good job sort of defining what that is. Often people think when you talk about are people willing to pay more for something, they're thinking about the price, that price of the product dictating everything, even customer experience. And basically what we're saying here is that, the price actually may not have as much of an impact as we believe. And actually, customer experience is the big thing that influences people. And underneath that, it's how they feel about the customer experience that really influences people's willingness to pay more in retail. Thinking about Harvey Norman and JB Hi-Fi, very different styles, I suppose, of experience, but strangely, like both of them have a lot of sales staff at hand in their stores. And I suppose when you go in there as a consumer and you want to buy something that's novel, expensive, electronic goods, you want to speak to somebody that you trust, knows what they're talking about in terms of that product, because you're going to spend, it's a higher value item for you, it's a higher margin item from them. So, they want their sales staff to be good and you want them to be good, so you can trust that they're giving you the best advice. And in both stores, they really do put a lot of investment behind their people, albeit in JB Hi-Fi, their store, I suppose, aesthetics are not great. There's a lot of, blaring, sort of confusing price led signage everywhere. But again, research has shown that confusing signage is actually a good thing for purchasing. More confusion, in a way, it can create a faster sell. But then you need a good salesperson to make a consumer feel comfortable in the midst of all that confusion. And I think JB Hi-Fi have really nailed that quite well.
Yeah, like I suppose I think I saw a thing once whereby someone described it was almost like an explosion in a marketing department that causes all the posters and stuff like that in JB Hi-Fi. It's almost like, how many posters can you have up? A similar business is Chemist Warehouse, which I actually quite like. The Chemist Warehouse, I think they spend huge amounts of money on marketing and brand, positioning themselves so they're first to mind. But with Chemist Warehouse, it is cheap. It tends to be cheaper than other stores, but it's also the ease of shopping in it is very good. I like the way it's set up along the shelves. You're pretty confident that you'll find all the vitamins, all the materials you're looking for. I think it's the bigger spread of the different products that a lot of stores don't have. I'll give another example. When I was younger, I used to work in a shop called Marks and Spencer's in Britain, which has. It's a bit of a mixed retailer. I don't know what an equivalent would be in Australia. It's predominantly, at least was, own brand, but it was a mid-market retailer, sort of upper middle market retailer, selling food and also clothing. But for many years, they had a no questions asked return policy on all clothing. So if you bought a pair of trousers or shoes or anything like that, you could return it, no questions asked, and get all your money back. When I worked there, some people really did take advantage of that. People would clearly wear items for like 6 months and then drop them back in for a full refund. But that confidence that it gives you in buying a product, that you're not going to go through that stress of trying to make an argument and explaining why you should be refunded. It was almost, it gives a trust, and you feel that you're being. It builds rapport, I think, with the customer, between the customer and the retailer. And even if the retailer loses out on some of the returns, I think the benefits to them, you can't really buy that brand awareness.
And obviously now, of course, we've been talking about, customer shopping experience in store, but obviously there's a massive change in the market now, and more people are shopping online. And, there's obviously people that prefer in-store and online, but there is a massive shift. And you can say, obviously, that's due to COVID and all those sort of things. But it could be also, age-related. And again, going back to experience, do people expect, I think people expect the same, if not better experience online. They want it all. I think overall, customer and shopper expectations from businesses is much higher across the board. And I think businesses, in a way, are struggling to get that, unified omni-channel experience from in-store to online. And some people, I suppose some businesses almost don't know what to do with their in-store because, online customer experience is moving so quickly. But in terms of, I think, in terms of technology and movement and change, yes, that's all happening very quickly, but we still are people and we still feel the same way and have the same frustrations regardless of online or in store. So I think from a business perspective, you always have to think back to the customer. What is it that's frustrating that customer about the experience, whether it be online or in store, and try and fix it. Like, for instance, a lot of studies have shown that, the worst thing, that the thing that's really driving people to online is because in store, you go to the store and there isn't the stock. And that can be quite frustrating. You've made the effort to get in your car, go to the store, find the car park, blah, 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 walk around the store. You get in there, you're hoping that you find it, it's not there. And it always tends to be the same thing. So most people are going online for that. Now, could we improve that? But potentially. Is online any better? Often you have to wait longer. If you're going for a pair of shoes, you want it to be here. And often you have to wait three or 4 weeks, especially now with supply chain issues, freighting issues, things left in the ports. It's not necessarily a seamless experience and it has its hiccups. So yeah, just bearing that in mind too.
I think Joanna touched there on the idea of, the value drivers. What are customers really going there for? And one thing I'll say about this is supermarkets. As in many countries, you have the more traditional, what you would call a full service supermarket, where you have a till, somebody packs your bags for you, at least in Australia. And in comparison to, say, the more discount, newer entrants, the German discount supermarkets. But one thing I'd say is, one of the big differentiators between Coles and Woolworths and the new entrants were that you could have somebody pack your bag for you. You didn't have to go through the self-checkout, etc. And that is a big value add, especially for some older people. And to be honest, also, just when you've been having a stressful day shopping, do you really want to wrestle and deal with doing it yourself? So I see that as a real plus, but more and more recently, when you go into a supermarket, there are no checkouts available, and you're forced to use the self-checkout system, which to me is almost like a supermarket, stripping away its actual value add, stripping away what people saw as a plus, and driving itself down to, fundamentally, if you want to compete on price, that's what you'll compete on, but you're probably going to lose those other customers who want that additional service that makes life a bit more easy, a bit more full service aspect. And, I think you'll see this more and more. I'd wonder what people feel about this, but with the listeners. But when you're in a supermarket, particularly in the late evenings, maybe after 7 p.m., very often there's not a checkout available, and you're forced to do a self-checkout system that I can understand completely saves the supermarket money, but that's what it feels like. It feels like you're saving the supermarket money.
Yeah, I think that particular example, that there's definitely a push from the supermarkets to drive people to either that click and collect or that online delivery service. But then it goes back to that point, is that a better service? Does it make our lives as consumers, shoppers, easier? Or actually, is it just as frustrating? And, actually, as you were saying, we want the old-fashioned experience where there's a bit more assistance, because potentially what they're offering isn't as convenient as the sales pitch of click and collect. For instance, often you can drive in, click and collect after work, or later on in the evening or in the middle of the day. There's less staff who are doing the picking in the shop, and you're just sitting there waiting in your car. Is it going to come? Is it not? Is it going to come? And then wasting maybe 45 minutes until the bags come down for you. Is that convenient? No, it's not. Equally, online delivery service, they give you a large window of time where they're supposed to come and deliver that shopping. Is that convenient for me, or is it convenient for them? I have to sit around waiting for them, and that can be very frustrating, especially if I am time poor and I've got things to do or meetings to have in the day, etc., etc. It's all about the convenience, and I'm fitting around them rather than fitting around me. So I still think there's that shift to online click and collect, especially in that retail area. But is it working? No, not necessarily. It's supposed to be in favour of the customer, but really isn't. So anyway, that's my two thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I think I'll finish up with, I'm a big believer that everything in life goes in cycles, and business goes in cycles too. And I suppose you could argue that the supermarkets were invented, like most of these things, probably in America, I assume, or Britain or Western Europe, probably implemented and rolled out from the 50s and 60s onwards, where you're bringing all these greengrocers and fishmongers and butchers all under one roof. And that brought, to some extent, it brought convenience because it was all done at the one time. But I think things go in cycles, and as you dehumanize the shopping experience, take away those value adds, take away even somebody to help you or give you advice on if you want to buy a cut of meat, people will start going back to the neighborhood butchers, the neighborhood grocers. I think it's widely accepted you probably will get better meat from the local butcher store, obviously if it's a good butcher store. Same with fish, same with any of those items. And I think, things will go in cycles. They go to conglomeration and big multinationals, and then that creates room for the alternatives as they cut back on those additional services, the advisory, the friendliness, the knowing you, the person at the deli counter who you might know. As that disappears from the big supermarkets through cost cutting, people will search for it. At least some people will search for it on that spectrum, and they'll search for it, maybe back in the place we all started, back at the butcher shop.
Yeah, I agree. I think, there are fads in business, and there is a tendency in business to leave the human element out because it's often the more complex, emotional, irrational side of things, and then lead with something that's more logical, systematic, like IT, technology, operational efficiencies. But at the end of the day, we still are human, and we are the ones that are buying it, regardless of the channel, and what we're using to buy the particular product. And we've got to bear that in mind as we zoom ahead with our technological advancements. Not saying that you shouldn't, because that's obviously it's progress too, but it's integrating that omni-channel experience by thinking very, very closely about the business model, where you want to take the business, and at the centre of that business model, the customer and that customer experience. Really unpacking what that means for your particular business and your customer. Anyway, thank you for listening. Bye.
Yeah, have a great day, and thanks again. Bye.